I was told that I probably wouldn't be able to professionally climb anymore because my hips would have such limited mobility. And, you know, being told that when I'm in my late 20s, not even 30 yet, like, you might have to retire. When it's this sport that I've done since I was 6 years old was news that I wasn't willing to accept. Hey, I'm Sasha DiGiulian, and I'm a professional climber. My background in rock climbing started with plastic. I started as a competition climber, and that's really where I cut my teeth and became a professional. Was going from when I was 6, I started climbing and started competing at 7 and did the youth competitions and then adult competitions and started competing and winning US nationals at 16, 17, 18, did the World Cups and won the female overall world championship when I was 18 in Arco, Italy. And kind of had the experience of, you know, the competition scene, and then I started transitioning to more outdoor sport climbing. And that's when I started realizing that I was really psyched on rock, more so than plastic. And so I think one of my big breakthroughs was in 2011. I did Pure Imagination, which at the time was 9A, and that was the first 9A done by a North American woman, and the hardest of the grade at the time, which shows you the progression of women in climbing. And from there, it was kind of like starting to discover what I was capable of on rock.
Like too excited to clip. No way! Dude, I'm so stoked!
I started university in 2012 at Columbia, and I had to really choose between how to spend my summer and winter breaks, because that was my time off from school, and could either be competing or climbing outside. And I was more excited about climbing outside, and it felt like limitless potential of what I could explore and achieve in climbing. So I started climbing more outside and started kind of tethering away from competition climbing. I had a really bad chronic hip pain for like 3 years, and it kept getting worse and worse to the point that my femur head, which sits in your socket like this, was just popping out. And it got to the point that it was just too bad to ignore. And I didn't know what was happening, and I don't know why I didn't get an MRI sooner, but I went in March of 2020. And I found out that I had what's called hip dysplasia, which is actually an anatomical disposition, and you can be born with it, and it also gets worse and worse the more that you grind on your hips. So it's really common for ballet dancers and figure skaters and actually climbing, because climbing's a lot in your hips, for it to manifest in what was happening to me, which is chronic hip pain and bone-on-bone rubbing that can sacrifice your pelvic bone. And so what happens after that is I had shredded through both sides of my labrum, and that's basically what holds your femur head in place. And now I had bone on bone with the femur and the pelvic bone, and that degrades the pelvic bone to the point that you need a replacement. So by the time I had gone in, it was kind of like, can we save my hips or not? And if we can, we have to operate now. And so I had a what's called a double PAO, which was a series of 5 surgeries. It was kind of a crazy process. Like, it was a 2 10-hour open hip surgeries. They cut my abs completely open 3 times, and I took 9 months off of climbing.
Cassie, welcome home.
What was really mental about the process was, first of all, I was told that I probably wouldn't be able to professionally climb anymore because my hips would have such limited mobility. And, you know, being told that when I'm in my late 20s, not even 30 yet, like, you might have to retire. When it's this sport that I've done since I was 6 years old was news that I wasn't willing to accept. And also, it was just kind of going into the unknown because I didn't know any other professional athletes that had had a double PAO surgery and had come back and not retired from their sport. It was mentally challenging going into the unknowns, but also the way that I deal with anxiety and everything is through athletics, and it's like doing what you love is climbing for me. So having that taken away made me really appreciate it, and I think that enabled me to have this healthier relationship with the sport coming back to it, because I got to reconnect with why I fell in love with it in the first place. And I've been technically professionally climbing since I was 12. Like, that's when I had my first sponsor. And I've gone through like ups and downs with my career. And I think that when you're so involved in a sort of niche limelight, so to speak, with your sport, there's always going to be like learning curves, and you just grow from your own mistakes. And so I think that having this like whole period of self-reflection to really connect with myself and understand what I wanted out of the sport and who I am beyond climbing was a pretty neat experience that I'm actually really thankful for in the end. I feel so much more appreciative of my body and what I'm just capable of. And I learned so much about nutrition and recovery and physical therapy, and over the process of the time off, I wrote a book, which is getting published next year, and I started my company, Sun Bars, which 2012 I established Sun Bars, and I got like the Instagram URL and the website and everything, because I always made my own bars, but I never had the time to actually create a company around it. So those two things are really cool, like, I guess, fruits that came out of the whole process too. Last month I did another big wall that I'm really proud of, climbing Ryu with Matilda Suderland and Brett Harrington, and it was an expedition that I put together about a year ago, and I just kind of had the idea when I was laid up with double hip reconstruction surgery and taking 9 months off of climbing, and I felt excited about like planning a trip and seeing if it was possible to get back to a level of climbing that I had achieved before, but I didn't know if I could achieve again. And now that I've done that, I feel like I'm back and excited to set some new goals.
Come on, come on.
Ryu is big, bold, adventurous.
Come on, Sasha.
Pitch 11.
No!
514B, 8C.
I've never even tried 8C to try and do it on a big wall. It's really pushing it for me.
Beauty of a big wall.
9.
2,000 plus feet boils down to 3 moves.
Come on, Sasha. 9.
What's interesting about like challenging big walls is that grade-wise there's maybe a disparity of like 8C to 9A, say. But when you're climbing an 8C on a big wall, for anyone who's ever been on a multi-pitch even, kind of know all of the fatigue and things that go into a wall beyond just the climbing. And so I've always said that I think that in order to prepare for a wall like that, you need to climb harder than that crux pitch in order to dispatch that crux pitch while on the mountain. And so I think that that was just like a new level of progression for me. And I love sport climbing still. It's like kind of like going to the gym. Like, it's fun and feels really chill and everything, but I think I don't get as excited, and I love that like full all-encompassing adventure aspect of being on a mountain and living with your teammates and like planning where you're gonna eat and where you're gonna sleep and like all of these like particulars that go into planning an expedition. It's just this way of also putting a little bit of a silence mode to all the chaos of everyday life. I think we all have a lot going on these days, and when you're on a mountain and you're so focused on a big goal, like a big wall, it enables me at least to be super present in the moment. And so I think now that I've recovered from my hip surgeries, I do feel this reinvigorated drive to go out and achieve some hard sport climbs again too. But ultimately, me trying to achieve hard single pitch sport climbs is kind of like this progression point in order to achieve harder big walls. I see them as more of like a point as a progression point rather than like the end point on my journey. And I also am really excited to just keep expanding, like do some more climbs in Yosemite, and I'm going back to Boulder after this to develop a multi-pitch climb with Lynn Hill in Boulder, which is gonna be really cool. I don't know yet if it goes, but I'm with the legend who says it goes, so we'll see.